Recording in progress.
Welcome to the Pease Restoration Advisory Board meeting. It is May 3rd, 2023. I'm Ona Ferguson. I'm the Consensus Building Institute here to help facilitate today. We're really happy to be here. We have a hybrid meeting, and my colleague Cameron is going to go through how that works, and then we'll jump into our content.
So hi everyone, I'm Cameron Hager with Consensus Building Institute, providing some additional support for this meeting. So as Ona said, this is a hybrid meeting. You will see in the middle here, we have two kind of odd looking things in the middle of the room. These are our OWL cameras. They will act as both microphone and speaker for those in the room. So let's make sure you project so that the owls can focus the camera on you, which might look a little bit weird because you can probably see yourself behind me, but just bear with that piece of technology. And for those online, if you have any technical questions or having issues, I'll be putting my email in the chat so that I can assist you. But for those who are attendees, we'll have a public comment portion at the end of the meeting where you can use the raise hand function. And for anybody who is a RAD member that is on Zoom, though I actually don't think I see anybody on Zoom that's a RAD member. So if there's one on there, I will contact them directly, but just keep in mind that we have people online who are listening in. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know.
Thank you, Cam. This feels a lot like pre-March 2020. This is like what the meetings felt like. It's sort of thrilling, really nice to see everybody. We have a 2-hour meeting since most or all of you at this point have watched a 45-minute presentation either before today or at 4:30. So are coming in sort of ready to interact and discuss and explore those topics more fully. We are going to, in like 10 minutes after we do introductions, we'll do our open portion of the evening where Restoration Advisory Board members can raise whatever's on their mind, can ask the technical team questions, can share things that the community is thinking about or interested in, and just explore the project, the cleanup, what's happening in the world related to all of this. And then we have a public comment period at 7:30 where anybody is welcome to have a few minutes to share thoughts with the RAB virtually or in person. And if you are in the room here in person and you're making public comment, we will ask you to come up to the table so you can be heard clearly online as well. And then we have a brief update on drinking water from our City of Portsmouth RAB member, Al Pratt, before we wrap up at 8 o'clock. Questions about the agenda at all? Great. I'm gonna have Andrea do our community co-chair do a welcome of the new members, and we'll let our new members introduce themselves, and then we'll do introductions with everybody so we really know who's here together.
I don't see Rosalie. You want to come to the table?
Oh, all our RAD members, please come. Yeah, we have various spots. Come on up.
There's a corner one there.
Oh, I'm supposed to be sitting.
Oh, yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Does it show?
Well, I've got a card for you. I have one. There's a name placard for her. Do you find it? Okay. Great. Do you have the list for you?
I don't.
No, I do.
Thank you so much. All right. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you all in person. And thank you so much for coming tonight. So we had several RAB members whose term was up recently and they chose to step down, which we thanked a lot of them at our last RAB and appreciated their contributions. And then we opened up the RAB to new members and we received applications, and we're really excited tonight to welcome 5 new RAB members. And I'm going to list off their names, but certainly give them the chance to share a little bit more about themselves. But we'd like to welcome Huddy Grandy, Ben Johnson, Rosalie Lopresto, Paul Roy, and Steve McCarthy. And again, just want to say welcome. We look forward to your contributions. Some of you I met on a meet and greet on Zoom earlier. I know Chris met a couple as well last week, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say and what you have to share with this group. And and get your thoughts and perspectives. So with that, why don't we start with Huddy? If you just want to share a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to be part of the RAB.
Sure. I wanted to be on the RAD because I am an abutter of Pease. My family has been in Newington for 180 years. It's very important to me and glad to be here. Great. Thanks so much.
Ben?
Yeah, Ben, I live in South Newington, so Newington resident. Biggest thing that I found was I sit on the planning board in Newington. I heard about the 6 hour site and how they were handling the contaminated material. And kind of got interested that way, so figured I'd join.
Great. Thanks so much. Rosalie?
Yes, hi, thank you for having me. I am the water commissioner in Rye. I'm also a retired doctor. And I also worked at Pease and have been exposed and had my children tested. They were exposed as well. So just interested in the process and remediation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then Paul Roy? Please.
I didn't see him.
Okay. And then Steve McCarthy?
No, he is cool, but I believe that. Are either of you on? Would you like to speak up? We're not on?
No. So we'll keep an eye out, and if we see them arrive, give them a chance to do that.
Okay, that's great.
So then I think I'll do introductions. We'll do introductions. We're gonna do introductions of everyone in the room. So this is quick. We'll start around the table. You can just say your name and your affiliation or role on the committee, and then we'll do the same around the room. And I'm gonna start with Michael.
Mike Donahue, there's two mics here, so I'm Michael for purposes of this, and I'm president of Newington, former vice chair of the Town's Economic Development Committee, which is quite originally got interested in this.
Hi, I'm Bill McQuillan. I represent the city of Portsmouth. I'm the fire chief, and I live in Portsmouth. And I came to the RAB from the city's Safe Water Advisory Group.
Andrea Amico, I'm a Portsmouth resident, and I co-founded a community action group called Testing for Peace back in 2015 after learning my family was exposed to PFAS here at the trade port, and the co-chair of the RAB here, and also serve on some other boards like the CAP with ATSDR, part of the National PFAS Contamination Coalition, and I also serve on the City of Portsmouth Safe Water Advisory Group.
Hi, I'm Mark Mattson. Probably been on the RAB now for my third term. I'm a mostly retired aquatic ecologist, 50-year resident of Portsmouth with an office on Peace.
Peter Sandin, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Project Manager for Peace, and the supervisor of the DoD site section for DES, and I also drank the water here at Peace for a number of years.
Mike Daly, US EPA. I work in the Boston office, project manager for quite a while at Peace. So if you go back and look at the historical record, you'll see my name all through. So nice to see everybody tonight in the flesh.
Hank and Olsik, I work with WSP. I'm the project hydrogeologist.
Haley Plant, also WSP, environmental scientist.
Hello, I'm Chris King. I'm what's known as the BEC for the Air Force and co-chair of the RAD. BEC stands for BRAC Environmental Coordinator, which I think is awesome because the B stands for, the B stands for BRAC, which is Base Realignment and Closure. So Base Realignment and Closure Environmental Coordinator, which is a wonderful title. Awful. But yes, please welcome everybody, and it's nice to see your faces again.
I'm Al Pratt. I'm the water resource manager for the city of Portsmouth. And I'm taking Brian Getz's role here on the RAB. He's been doing it for many, many years. So I'm stepping up and filling his role as a representative from the water supplier.
I am Grant Austin, project manager with WSP, consultant on the project for the Air Force.
Jared Sheehan, the environmental manager for PDA.
Great, let's go to this table back here.
I'm Lauren Tierney. I'm one of the project managers at WSP.
Jack Bessie, a project engineer with WSP, working on the two winter mitigation systems. City of Portsmouth, Chief Plant Operator, the fire training.
Amy Quinton, I'm the Health Risk Assessor with WSP.
All right, Nate Bogan, WSP veteran challenges, mainly on Site 8, supporting the RI and AIMS as well.
And Maddie Winsmore, also with WSP as a project. Great, let's go to the next table.
Justin Trial, Brendan Shaw with WSP, project manager.
I'm Alan Tevio, Cherokee Nation, geologist, providing support with airports.
Hey everybody, Kelsey Dunkel, I'm with the EPA, community involvement on site. Mike, Elizabeth McKenna, the Senator She's Grace Carmichael with ECC for our contractor. Deborah McDonald with ECC.
Dave Roll with ECC. Rest, Brett Santos with ECC.
Great, and then we'll do on the line. We have members of the public. I think I'm gonna just read the names of the members of the public who are attending so that people in the room here know. We have Andrew Hoffman, Arnie Lariche, I'm sure I'm saying these wrong, sorry. Frank Getchell, Hagi Nassau, Carmen King, Carrie Zach, Patrick Carroll, and Val de la Fuente. And Dante Engel from the Air Force team helping facilitate and support this process. Thanks, everyone. Now that we know who's here, we can get started. We have to actually approve the January meeting summary. Any concerns with the January meeting summary? All right, we'll get that posted. Thank you. And again, if you are a member of the public and would like to make public comment, please let Cameron know. If you're in the room here, one easy way to do that is, I think most people in here are staff, so this seems unlikely, but there's public comment cards there at the front desk. If you put your name on one and give it to Cam, then we'll know you want to make public comment when the time comes. If you're in the virtual meeting and you want to make public comment, if you can just put a note in the Q&A that you'd like to make public comment, we'll make sure we have time for that. Thank you. And with that, we're going to shift into our open RAB conversation. And Andrea has a few things she wanted to start with. Is that right?
Sure, we can start with that.
Share with that information. And we're going to put up the slides.
Perfect.
For you. Give me just a sec, but you can start.
Yeah, I just had a few updates and I thought some of them might be easier to show on slides. But the first one, I had mentioned at the last RAB that our community members were looking into some technical assistance opportunities. And since we last met as a RAB, the RAB community members did meet with the EPA twice. Thank you very much, Mike Daly, for helping us to facilitate that. The EPA has two programs, a TAG, Technical Assistance Grant, and a TASK. And we met about the two different programs, and we ultimately decided to go with the TASK. And that stands for Technical Assistance Services for Communities. And what we liked about this program is, if you want to just go to the next slide, it just lists the benefits of this program. And so I just wanted the larger group to know that we are going to move forward with this program with the EPA. We're, because there's so much data, there's so much technical information, it's difficult as community members to interpret all of it, to understand what it means. We know that there's a big RI report that's coming out soon that's going to be hundreds of pages, if not 1,000 pages. So helping us to read through those documents, understand what they mean, prepare comments for that. And the other thing that we really liked about this program was that it will help us educate the community better, help us host community meetings to better relay this information to our neighbors and people who aren't at the table but care about the issue. And so we are really looking forward to this program with the EPA and looking forward to next steps. We have let the EPA know we want to do this, and it's my understanding, they're going to work with us to have a kickoff meeting soon. The other thing I want to mention that we liked about this program is that they give us access to independent technical experts. It's not people that work for EPA or DOD, it's a subcontracted group of folks, and it can be a variety of experts like risk assessors, hydrogeologists, whatever we need. So that we were also really excited about that opportunity and really grateful for it, and just wanted everyone to know that we are going to move forward with that. And you may hear more about meetings or opportunities, and we'll keep you all posted. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. The other thing I just wanted to let people know about really quick is that the DoD at the Pentagon level is doing a community outreach initiative. I learned about this about a year or two ago, and their plan was to interview communities, especially those with RABs, so they could get a better understanding of how DoD engages with communities, what works well, what doesn't work well. And I have recently learned this flyer, and you probably can't see it very well, there's 4 sites that DoD has already worked to interview, and Pease is not one of them, which I was a bit disappointed about that. I think we have a lot to offer DoD in terms of our experience and what's happened here with community engagement, and how we have ideas on how they could improve it and what's working well and what's not. And so I did reach out to the Pentagon and ask them to consider Pease as a site, and I did get an email back that they are still working to select a few more sites, but that they are going to develop a questionnaire. So at the very least, it sounds like we would be able to fill out a questionnaire about our experience, but I have shared with our congressional folks that I really think that DoD should be interviewing our Pease community as part of this project. And so, you know, more to come on that hopefully, but I just wanted to let folks know about that initiative, and that I am advocating that we are selected as a group that is interviewed. Next slide. Okay, and then this is another project that I just wanted to tell people about. So a little bit of context, back in 2019, I started hearing about foam accumulating around lakes and riverways in Michigan near the former Ward Smith Air Force Base. And in Michigan, they took the initiative to test the foam, and they found that the foam was very highly concentrated with PFAS. And so that prompted me to ask here at this site, have we seen foam? Can we test for it? And so I did make a request in 2020 to have foam sampled in Pease, but that's not something that has been done. And earlier this year, a researcher from the University of Florida, who is testing foam in Florida, decided he wanted to expand some of his testing sites. And so he reached out to a group of community members, and I said, I would love to send in foam samples from Pease. And so he sent me 2 kits, and in April, my son and I went out, and we weren't sure where to look, but we kind of drove around Pease, and we were able to find a couple sites, and we did collect samples, and I have sent it in to the University of Florida. He said they're going to test it for 100 different PFAS. I don't know when we're going to get the results back. It's part of a study, and in working with other researchers in the past, sometimes when things are part of publications, we don't always get the data until it's published. So it could be a while, but nonetheless, I just wanted this group to know that I was able to find foam right here off of Corporate Drive. And then I found another sample just off the base on the Greenland-Newington line. The protocol was to collect foam, as you can see, my son holding the bag, and then also a corresponding surface water sample. So they're going to test both. And so you take the surface water sample right next to where you took the foam sample. And yeah, we had a lot of fun doing it. My son really enjoyed being part of it. And I'll keep you posted. And then if you could go to the next slide. Just one other thing I wanted to mention that I observed while we were out driving around looking for foam sites. There was a residential home in Newington where I did see foam like kind of bubbling up on the lawn, or what appeared to be foam to me. I did not sample it because that wasn't part of this project. It was a residential home, but it just makes me wonder for the other Newington folks here, if you've ever seen foam like that bubbling up anywhere else. This was, you know, near the wildlife refuge, and I just wanted to make that known to the folks that are here. And if you could go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to include this link too. So Michigan, as I talked about, that's where I first learned about this issue. They have a whole website dedicated to PFAS and foam, and they've actually issued a do not touch advisory because of the high levels of foam found on their waterways. And so again, that's where my concern is coming from and why I want more data on this. And so I just wanted to share this opportunity with all of you. And then lastly, is it not showing up? My video?
And we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it on. Yeah.
Okay. Before you start it, I just want to give some context. As you all know, we've been struggling with getting adequate amount of data from DoD regarding the data that they're collecting here, and that's regarding some language that was put in the NDAA with the intention of sharing more data, but unfortunately it's been interpreted at the Pentagon level in a way that I think was not the intention of the language in the NDAA, and it has limited the amount of data that the Air Force has been able to share with us. And so I have continued to talk to Senator Shaheen's office about this. She's very well aware of the issue. And I just wanted to show a video of an exchange that she had last month, April 19th, during a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing. I guess what I'll just say is there's really no update. It's still a barrier, but it's something our congressionals are well aware of and they're working really hard on. And I just wanted to play this exchange real quick so folks could see for themselves, the questioning that's happening on it. And hopefully we'll have some answers from DoD soon.
I actually have a question related to PFAS for you and probably for Secretary Chaudhry, because it has to do with the former Pease Air Force Base, which is now the National Guard site in New Hampshire. And I should say at the outset that the Air Force has been very helpful over the years since we first discovered PFAS in 2013 at working with the community on the cleanup. However, we now have an issue that's come up, and I'm extremely concerned, Secretary Owens, with the department's interpretation of Section 345A of the 2022 NDAA. It's a provision that was designed to increase transparency for PFAS testing with affected communities. Instead, the department has interpreted that provision as one that requires that they curtail data sharing. We worked, some of you may remember, in the last NDAA, we worked to try and address this. I had an amendment that was sponsored by the committee, which I was assured by DoD officials that that issue would be fixed as the result of that amendment. However, what we have seen in the last year is that DoD has walked back those assurances. The issue remains unchanged. It's become a real concern, not just for members living in the community who feel like they don't have access to information now, but also to the regulatory bodies in New Hampshire who don't have the information that they need. So do you have an update, or can you get us an update on this committee of what the department is planning to do to address this transparency issue?
Senator Shaheen, I will get you an update. I don't have one right now.
Okay. I hope the update comes with a commitment to work with us to address the underlying concern, because I see this as ongoing, and as we know, with over 700 sites around the country, this is an issue not just in New Hampshire, but it's going to be an issue everywhere.
I agree, and I think that the proposed regulatory action that EPA has put out is the type of forcing function that requires DoD to rethink what we've been doing. So we are taking steps in preparation for understanding that reduced level is coming, and in the process of doing that, we can also address the transparency questions that you have.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to play that. And so I just wanted folks to know that there's no real update in terms of changing that, but clearly the pressure is on at the Pentagon level to do more, and to be clear that the data sharing issue is not specific to Pease. This is coming from a lot higher up, and it's affecting all of the services. And it's an issue that absolutely needs to be addressed. And we will continue to work towards getting a resolution so we as a community can get the data that we need to feel like we can inform this process as best as we can. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.
If I can just add something to that. So because of the lack of the data sharing, where I used to get copied on the private well results being collected by the Air Force, and they're no longer sharing that, I did make the request to the Air Force as they transmit those results back to the property owners to include a statement that says that DS is no longer being CC'd on this, but if you have questions about the Pease project, and include my contact information. Or if there's a health related question to provide, our environmental health program
contact information. Chris had said.
Yeah, we did have such a statement. It's not to that detail, but yes, we can always look on modifying it as well. For more information specifically to the health stuff. But yeah, that has been added. It's been sent out recently, I believe. So it's yeah. Hopefully we get some context.
Thanks. RAB members, this is your chance to ask questions about the presentation or other elements of the cleanup for what's happening on site, on the peninsula. What's on your mind? What would you like to know? Andrea. Oh, and new RAB members. If you want to get in the line to get called on, if you put your name up, your name card up, then you don't have to like try to interrupt your colleagues and friends.
My question is for Chris. I know your first slide talked about the private wells and the update on how you're addressing private wells that have been above the New Hampshire DES standards for PFAS. But now, since we last met, the EPA has issued proposed MCLs for some PFAS, and they are lower than New Hampshire standards. And so my question is, how many more private wells, if those MCLs are to go through, which they're proposed at this time, but how many more private wells in Newington would be above those MCLs? And once those MCLs are in place, will the Air Force take responsibility to provide clean drinking water, or would you, because they're proposed, would you do it now, or do you have to wait for them to go through?
Yeah. Well, we do know who's above that. Obviously, we keep pretty good records on the samples that we take. I believe there are 11 wells that would be over the proposed MCLs. Of course, there are other conditions in place before treatment can be put on a private well. So we would have to go through that process of evaluating who qualifies according to those DoD rules. That being said, MCLs are that's more in the Al's purview. Obviously obviously DoD is committed to fulfilling our cleanup responsibilities, whatever that may entail under the CERCLA program. But yeah, MCLs generally apply to drinking water, so producers, right? They don't necessarily, but I assume that should anything be proposed, then New Hampshire would follow suit with the groundwater quality standards. And so of course those would have to be evaluated at that time as well. So it is a process, but yes, the DoD is now collecting more and more information in preparation for whatever MCLs may come out. And so, but yes, we do know that at the current proposed levels, there are 11 wells.
Okay. Would you do anything now to notify those homeowners like, hey, we have your data and the EPA has proposed these numbers. There's nothing, we're not taking any action right now, but we just want to let you know the EPA has changed. Or would DES do that? Or would somebody, I would like to think these homeowners would be informed of the lower levels that are being recommended. So should they want to take action sooner than these standards go through and all these processes happen, is there going to be anything done proactively to reach out to these 11 homeowners to flag that their levels may, if the MCLs go through, their levels would be above a recommended safe level?
That's a good question. I'm going to bring it back to my leadership and make sure we get that one answered. Obviously we can't take action until it's law. But we need to say there are actions to collect the data and prepare should something come down. Should it be?
Yeah, and I understand you can't intervene, but I think those folks could be informed.
Sure.
And I think that's the right thing.
Yeah, it's a good question. And like I said, some of these things, they require some sort of formatting approval and all that stuff. But I'll take it back to my leadership and see what we can do. It's not a terrible idea. It's a good one, in fact, and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
I could throw a little information there too. What happened the last time when we established our lower Indian environmental quality standard? We step that back. So when an MCL comes through, and MCL regulates the municipal water drinking water supply, it doesn't apply to private wells in New Hampshire. But in New Hampshire, all groundwater is considered eligible for drinking water. So we have what's called ambient groundwater quality standards. Almost always those standards would be adopted to be the same concentration as the MCL. And what happened several years ago when we did lower our HEQSs, ambient groundwater quality standards, at that point the Air Force wasn't taking action on any mitigation for wells who had exceedances of those concentrations. So we reached out to the homeowners to give them a heads up that their concentrations based on Air Force sampling did exceed those numbers, and that we would work with them to or ideally the Air Force would step in. Eventually the Air Force did
Mm-hmm.
recognize our HQS. So hopefully that's the way things will go this time.
Would DES inform these folks though? Do you have the data on these wells?
I don't, so,
Okay.
certainly nothing in the last few years, but, you know, ideally the Air Force will take the action. If the Air Force doesn't, and somehow the data is presented to us, then we would step up and notify. Seems like there's a few steps there that would need to fall into place, and we would ask the Air Force to make that outreach to the property owners if they're not giving us the data.
Yeah.
Great. I have a few more questions, but I'll give other people a chance to ask.
How do you jump in?
Andrea just made me think of, I don't know anything, so I know nothing, but you just made me think of a question. So is there likewise a plan to inform homeowners whose properties are within the exceedance zone that will eventually be part of the GMC groundwater management zone? I mean, do homeowners know in Newington that their properties may be within that red line? Do you know what I'm talking about, the red line? Does anyone know that?
Well, they have this forum. Unfortunately, not often everybody comes to them. And so, you know, we sometimes ask our community leaders to reach out, or people ask them. And of course, these maps are available for your use to spread to your neighbors if you'd like, and then they can see for themselves. I mean, obviously, they're great out where private land exists, but people generally know where they live on the peninsula. But yeah, so far, you know, we're not that far along in the process.
Yeah, I'd also say if someone has, we have private well monitoring program and your reference, and anybody who has data collected on their properties provide up with that data, and it's compared to local standards, whatever the version might be.
I was just going to ask Chris, do you think some of these could be provided to the town, or I don't know?
These are all publicly releasable. They've been approved.
Yeah, but as far as the actual printed boards, I'm wondering if that's something that, to your point, whether they could be, if there's a town hall, town offices or something like that, that would be.
Yeah, that would be great in the town lobby. I mean, I know that this board has been around for a long time. I know we have Newington Reds on the board for a long time, but news doesn't travel that easily when it comes to very highly technical information. So I would love if we could borrow the boards at some point. I think that people would like to see it.
Committee members, remember to speak up a little bit so this microphone can pick you up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go for it. Let's let Rosalie jump in and then I'll go to you.
So, so this question is for New Hampshire DS. And I believe it was in 2016 where they set the MCLs for PFOS, PFOA. Now, that was quite some time ago. Don't you agree?
Yes.
A lot has changed since that time. A lot of data has come out, compelling data, which led to the interim health advisory, which is set now 0.04 and 0.02 for PFOS and PFOA. Is there any discussion at New Hampshire DES to lower those numbers, even if the December EPA ruling doesn't get promulgated?
Certainly, our risk assessment and environmental health program folks are the ones who will be reviewing all the data on the toxicity values that have been released by the EPA. Just to clarify, so in 2016 is when New Hampshire, through emergency rulemaking, did adopt our first ambient groundwater quality standards for PFAS and PFOA. And then in 2019, and there was a court injunction until 2020 before the new lower standards for those two plus two additional compounds. So we broke away from EPA's health advisories and established lower, using different toxicological data for lower ambient groundwater quality standards. So we're certainly looking at reviewing what EPA has put forward, both with their interim health advisories and the MCLs, and I'm not part of that process, so I can't speak to the specifics, but certainly we're very interested in the science and how EPA has got those numbers, and whether or not we would, whether we would break from EPA and do something different, I can't tell you right now.
Thank you.
To piggyback off that, Peter, do you know, once the EPA sets the MCLs, whatever they may be, how quickly will New Hampshire adopt it? Is there a long process to do that, or is it pretty automatic?
There is a specific process that's followed. I believe that we then, and it's actually spelled out by EPA, but I believe it's we have to then issue a public comment period to adopt those. And I believe that's a 1-year period.
Okay.
And then I think water suppliers are given yet another buffer to make sure that they can put the infrastructure in place to address you know, filtering those lower numbers. So there's it's kind of a multi-year process. I understand it.
But to be clear, the law, I think the way I understand it, the law is written that if EPA sets these standards, New Hampshire has to adopt them. New Hampshire can't decide not to do it. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Michael.
Thank you. So a couple observations. I think the discussion, once again, we just had about this NDAA language, just goes in circles to the end. We just had it spelled out before us. I wish we had a team for Senator Shaheen to use in questioning the secretary about how it hurts people. What's happening here is that there are people who have been drinking this water potentially for years who are not being told by anybody in government, one government agency, because they can't get the information from the Air Force, and the Air Force, because they say that they're protecting these people, their privacy, by not telling anybody who they are or where they are, so they won't give the information to another governmental agency. And the result is that they are continuing to be potentially to be unaware of this. And it is mind-boggling, really. And the expense of discussing it, time wasted, I look at you, Chris, and I know this is way above your pay grade. Okay, you happen to be the guy that's here, and you know Val's tuned in, and it's way above his pay grade. I realize that, but this has to end. And if this is going to go on, if this is going on all over the country, it's insane. So please do whatever you can to take back that message. And, you know, it's coming, it's going to come at every armed services hearing, apparently. And, you know, I'll just leave it. It's obvious. I don't have to say any more about that. Secondly, I want to compliment the Air Force for the effort to finally get some information communicated here. These boards are excellent. The material that was put together for the meeting are excellent. This is what we've all been looking for. And now you've got some tools to communicate. We have some tools to communicate. Now, fortunately, I think TASC will help us, help you do that communication to the community, because it's not happening. The ratio, as you can see by this meeting, the ratio of, you know, consultants to members, true members of the public attending is at best 20-to-1. And that's because the public doesn't know anything about this. They really don't. And in Newington, it's a very small town. It's not going to be impossible at all to reach the public. But those maps disclose things that have to be discussed. And that, I think it's good that Newington has got proactive and appointed some additional members who are interested in this, who are going to reach out, because no matter what was reported, And the tools weren't there to report it. You can study the maps, you can study the figures, but you have to blow them up. You can only see part of it at a time. All of this is so much easier. And that's what it's got to be about. That's what your success is our mission means. It's getting that information out. And we want to help you do that. So thank you for what you've done. I mean, that's a lot of work that went into that. And it reflects a lot of work beneath it that you're reporting. And I guess that's the last thing I'd like to finish on is Site A. I've been, a broken record in here, urging that the Air Force review the situation with the, at best, underperformance. And in some of your language previously, your predecessor, I think, basically described it as, misperformance of the intermediation mitigation system there, which is sitting on the one known source of this material for sure. There's no question that it's in is likely the most significant source without all the work that Hank's doing. And to have years go by while it works at 50%, we used to get percentages. Now you're merging it in with Ames, so we can't tell, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to improve it. You're saying here that the Air Force is committed now to improving that system. My only question for you is, what is the timeline on that improvement?
I think I said it before. Right now, I don't want to say hamstrung, but things are a little delayed because of a contract vehicle issue. So we are looking. We're going to be, looking in the out years to fund these upgrades. It's a matter of getting things on contract, getting them awarded, and then of course getting them. Because Peace pretty much we had it pretty good for a while, where we didn't have to compete for funds. But there's all these other installations are getting some attention now, as they should. And so now things are, we have to fight for our money as well. And I don't want to say those are low priority. They're absolutely not. You'll see that we already made the investment in the switch of the resin, which is making a very, very good impact on our flow rates over there. So it's a stepwise process. It's a matter of I got to get something under contract, and that's currently an obstacle for me, which is going to get fixed fairly shortly. I'm hoping, and then after that, it should. We have the engineering and the support from the regulators to get that kind of stuff done. And so, we discuss all of this with them in the room, and kind of the plans of attack that we had for Site A. That's everybody's on board. It's just a matter of money and contracts. And so we're working on it. I'm hoping we can do it in FY24. Fingers crossed. I can't make any promises, but that's my plan. That's my goal. And it's like I said, I put forth my programs, and it includes this already. I already have it in all my programming documents. It's just a matter of I need to get the money and get it on the contract to take care of it.
Thank you.
You bet. And thank you for the feedback. It's nice to know that this is something you appreciate. I mean, the folks that work on this RI, Hank and all the rest of the WSP people in the room, it's astonishing. And it's
I mean, I've been involved in a number of Superfund sites. This is a significant effort that's happening. There's no question. My concerns. He's never been to a meeting, but she's got it down. My concerns are the communication aspect. I just don't think you're helping yourself as much as you could, because at some point you're going to need a community commitment regarding this.
Yeah, sure.
And when you go looking for it, they got to know where it's coming from. And it can't be, the rigmarole we went through the last time with the governor having to order the water, bottle water for people. Why would you want to come close to repeating that? Why? That's just a black eye for the Air Force. That's enough. There's plenty of other people here.
Questions, thoughts?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Has most of the testing been basically just Peas and just outside of it, or is there any plan to kind of do into the bay at all, or even across the bay?
Well, we're not going to do the bay because we can't be assured that that's from the Air Force. So we're focusing our efforts on, what's our responsibility? And as you can see, we've been kind of stepping out, trying to track, make sure we step with PFAS. And so we have done parts, you know, where the water from on-base surface water exits out into the bay. We've done oysters and water in that area. And that's pretty much the extent of the bay that we've done. But yeah, it has been done. It has been accounted for.
I think, Hank, to clarify, the concentrations that are detected all the way out, farther away from the base, there's no evidence to support that there are concentrations migrating underneath the river or the bay that would require testing on the far side.
Right. No, the river is a regional discharge area. The bays are a regional discharge for groundwater. So you know it's in cross section. You have the peninsula, the runway, groundwater is flowing down, and then it's coming up into the bays and rivers. And that's the same scenario on the other side of the bay. The other side of the river, it's coming down and coming up into the rivers and bays. So it's not migrating underneath it.
Okay, Hank. What about groundwater movement into the Great Bog to the south?
It's coming into Great Bog. That's one of the discharge areas, and then that drains into Great Bay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Almost out.
I want to remind everyone of the various pieces that were presented in the technical presentation in case anyone had questions about that, right? And I see two records, so there we go. Andrea,
my question is for Grant. On your Site 8 update, you talked about a sand filter test. So what exactly is that targeting? Like, I think it said multiple things. Is that to help with the iron, or
yeah,
I mean, sand doesn't.
It's targeted to solids removal.
I'm sorry.
It's targeted to solids removal. So
okay.
Iron metals.
Okay.
We've got a slipstream pilot test upcoming, scheduled for the upcoming year to basically increase our effluent rates.
Yeah, Andrea, the goal of that is essentially a lot of the issues that have limited the flow at the Site 8 INS have been directly related to solids that we're pulling from the extraction wells. And we're looking at additional steps to remove those solids, the iron, manganese, all sorts of other particulate matter. Ways to get that out to limit fouling on bag filters, on the activated carbon, on the ion exchange resin, all of which will help improve the system capacity, improve system uptime, all of which is with the goal of pulling more water out of the capture zone potential of the system.
Right, and this is just like a pilot right now. Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah,
so it's definitely being implemented.
The specific technology that we're looking at for the pilot test, we would like to test it on the system before we commit to implementing it as part of a larger overhaul of the treatment process, so that we know that what we're putting in is going to do what we need it to do to achieve the processing goals, to achieve the capture we want.
Okay. Great, thank you. I have a question regarding the RI. Folks talked about getting more money and being able to go up to 3 more years on the RI process and trying to fill in some data gaps. Could you be a little bit more specific on what data gaps you're going to fill in? Like, I think there was a mention of soil and groundwater.
Yes.
But is there any more plans to do plants or vegetables, maybe potentially foam, any other wildlife samples, things like that?
Yeah, well,
Paul, to see if what your data gaps might be that if you included in the model.
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely doing it with education. So that's kind of, one that has, risen above some of the other pathways at this point. So I think there's some additional, we're looking into some additional pathway. I don't think we're currently looking at something at this time. But I mean, as far as I know, everything is still, in a contractual phase. I don't think we haven't formally agreed any of these data gaps at this point. So it's just in process.
Okay, well, okay, I'd like to make a request that you guys consider foam. I did request that before. And I just want, I don't know when we'll have the foam data back from Florida, but there is foam on the base and near the base, and I would like you to consider it. It's been an issue in other places, so. Okay, I have a few more questions, but I'll let Mike ask.
To the technical team, if you're answering questions, can you actually come much closer in and be a little louder? It'd be great. Michael.
Yeah, good evening. One up there. You thought you could get away with it. You're gonna squash wave it. So the one thing we learned is that the RSLs are now reflective. The 22 RSLs now show PFOS for shellfish. And I guess I certainly am interested in all the things that Andrea listed. There's been a desire to pursue this shellfish issue expressed repeatedly here at the RAB meeting when former member I know pressed you hard on this. And does this change in the RSLs enter into your judgment? I'm just surprised to hear you say we're likely not.
Well, we have two very comprehensive rounds of data at this point, and they were taken several years apart. They covered pretty much anywhere that's potential shellfish harvesting that could be potentially related to these. I think we feel pretty confident in the data set that we have, that it's representative of what someone might be harvesting. The change in the RSLs, it basically means, when I was talking about the risk assessment process, that the shellfish would now be carried through the entire risk assessment. But the concentrations, they have only just gotten into that category. They're not, times 10 above that, so they're still within a range that, it doesn't raise to the point that I think, there could be.
Doesn't tip the scale at all towards doing any more testing.
I don't think it does at this point. At this point, it just means that we are going to carry the shellfish into the risk assessment. That's really the only change. But it doesn't change the fact that, we believe it's a pretty comprehensive data set.
You're talking about all around the peninsula here. You're talking about begin at Trickies, you go to Broad Cove, the Malta McIntyre Brook, Harris Cove, and Goodman Point.
Yep.
It's not, it's really ubiquitous at this point, which that isn't what was reflected when you made the decision earlier not to have it. I just urge you to look at that hard. You're going to hear about it, sure. Once this comes out, that that there are those levels, albeit low. It's going to be a lot of interest in that. This is a lot of interest in that shellfish.
Thank you. Let's go to Mark.
Yeah, this is a question about that new EPA 1633 method, which standardizes, PFAS PFOA testing. Since most of your data all of your data prior to then was done under the previous method, particularly with respect to non-detect data, some of the non-detects that I see on that map, would they change under the new method? I guess if you don't know because you didn't detect it because you weren't doing that, but would that require resampling, replotting, so forth? Shellfish right through groundwater, sediment, surface, everything.
Well,
For the most part, the detection limits are
it's pretty the same, yes.
It's really ground, right?
Okay, so
essentially for the other media, shellfish, we don't really anticipate a difference in detection limits, so it shouldn't change.
And as part of our RI extension contract that we're doing, obviously, we're adopting 1633 for everything across the board, including groundwater.
Yeah.
And along with it, we're going to be doing annual perimeter sampling as well. Just make sure the data's up, it's complete and it's up to date and it's usable and all these risk assessments on the RI report. So yeah, we are doing more sampling based on 1633. It's more focused on the perimeters, like you're saying, where.
Okay, but there's no way, the holding time on these samples is short enough that you couldn't reanalyze 2022 samples.
The samples are all long gone.
Yeah.
Okay, just like a cross calibration type of thing. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I think the sample holding period for the old method was like 14 days or something, wasn't it, for PFAS? Yeah, it was really long.
And just one on that point, so as part of the RI, in addition to the 3,700 whatever samples were collected for the RI, there was a previous 3,742 samples collected over the ensuing 7 years. And we specifically asked for the RI, some of that older data did have actually higher detection limits. So we went back where you're relying on an ND that is higher than the RSL or part per trillion. They did identify a handful of locations to go back and resample as part of the RI.
Thank you.
I had a question actually regarding that too, because this will look for 40 different PFAS, right? But I feel like I recall from prior meetings that for Ps, you were only looking for like 13. There was a short, you weren't even doing the 537 method, right? There was a shorter list of PFAS.
It was P's list.
Right.
Which was 13, but then for the RI, we looked at the 25. And kept on that list for the entire RI.
Okay, and so
I can clarify.
Okay.
So from the get-go, we did the 537 method for the full suite, and early on in the highest source areas, we did find that there's 13 these PFAS compounds that were repeatedly detected. So for a bunch of those early investigations, we just, even though they ran the 537 method, they were reporting the 13 P's 13. That didn't hold true for the private well or the municipal well samples. They ran and reported the full suite of 24, 25 compounds. But now that we're into the RI, they've been looking at the full suite. So the P's 13 is now by the way. So.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. And so now that you'll be testing for 40, when will you be implementing this method, and when would we know if you identified additional PFAS that we weren't already aware of?
This will all kick in with the new contract extension. That's kind of the trigger for it. Okay. So all the new samples on the extended RI will start the 1633.
But we don't know exactly when that'll happen.
I'm hoping it's in the works. Let's say that it's
okay. So fairly soon, you would be starting to use this new method.
Yeah.
And if you were to identify any additional PFAS, we would be informed about that.
Yeah, I mean, the NDAA thing, we're obviously waiting on that to do a big data sense with y'all.
But I think
a lot of the newer chemicals we're not expecting.
It's a dirty words. Just don't say it.
No, but I do think, like, even if you can't tell us where, you could say, okay, we've now sampled for 15 additional PFAS and 3 were detected. You don't have to tell us where.
No problem.
I think you could at least let us know if there's new PFAS identified that weren't detected for.
Simple, yeah.
Okay. Amy, I had a question for you about the human health risk assessment. So you talked about the first part, the BHHRA being published in 2022, and that it could be work plan.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's ever been shared with the RAB. Could that be sent to us? You said it's like available online.
I think we maybe had a bullet point somewhere that was done, but I don't think we ever really presented it.
Okay.
So it is, I mean, it has been finalized. It has been, approved by the regulators, which means it's posted somewhere at this point.
Yeah, it's on one stop.
It's on one stop.
It's on the admin record as well.
Right.
If it's not, it needs to put there.
So I don't check One Stop or the admin record. Like, I think that something like a report like that would be really important to send in an email to the RAB to say, we completed this document, it's finalized. I just think that'd be really helpful. So I'd like to request that be sent to us. And I'd also just like to request moving forward that documents like that be shared when they're done, because I'm certainly not looking on One Stop for updates. I'm trusting this process to give us updates. So I would appreciate that, please. The other question I had for you, Amy, was you had made reference to some of the, I think it was the risk levels being non-cancer endpoints and factors of 10. It is my understanding that the EPA MCLs, and I could be incorrect about this, but the reason why they're so low is because they have used cancer endpoints. So I'm confused as to why our RSLs are being looked at as non-cancer endpoints when I think we're hearing that there are cancer endpoints being factored into other things. And maybe it's not apples to oranges, but PFAS has been associated with cancer. So I'm just, if you could be more specific and clarify why it's being looked at through a non-cancer endpoint lens.
Yeah, I can try to clarify that. So yes, PFAS and PFOA are definitely associated to a degree with cancer endpoints. However, the toxicity values that we are using under this circular process for Superfund, the non-cancer toxicity value is more conservative. So for PFOA, there is a cancer value. And we do include that. It is included in all the calculations. The RSLs are based on both the cancer and the non-cancer endpoint. But it just mathematically works out that it is more toxic than it is carcinogenic by those tox values, if that makes sense. So whenever we are doing an assessment for PFAS under CERCLA using the current toxicity values, it's really the non-cancer that we're focusing on. The MCLs, they have taken a different look at the tox values. They've taken a new look at the cancer values. They've come up with some draft values for PFOS, which we don't have under CERCLA right now. There is no carcinogenic slope factor for PFOS. For PFOA, they have, I think it's something like 4 orders of magnitude more conservative cancer slope factors. So the cancer endpoint now for PFOA under the MCL, much more conservative than the value that we're using. So I mean, it's kind of an open question, what's going to happen with those tox values as the MCL goes through the process? Will they eventually be, I don't know if they'll be incorporated into the CERCLA process or how that will happen. It's a question. So it could change, so what we're right now, it's the non-cancer for PFOS and PFOA under this process. It could end up being the cancer ends up driving those two chemicals. We'll see. This is why there's a lot of flexibility work built into these work plans, because things are changing.
That's been a constant. I think we've been constantly adapting to new toxicity information, and to that matter, you talk about how many more PFAS. From a risk standpoint, we can always assess that as we get more tox values in. So EPA has recently added a tox value for PFBA and I think PFHXA. So again, as we continue to sort of build sort of the toxicity library for these chemicals, then we can sort of make more sort of quantitative assessments of risk. But until we get to some of these other ones, then again, you'll know it's there, but we just can't say much in terms of what the risk is associated with those chemicals.
Thank you. Sorry, I wanted to go back to the chickens. Andrea asked where the data gaps are. I'm constantly thinking what I'm going to bring back to Newington, because I want to bring information back to the select board and talk to people and post online, because that's kind of why I'm here. So she asked about data gaps, and you said your chickens, which I have no idea why would be chickens, maybe the eggs or something. I don't know. Eggs, yes. The eggs. Okay, yeah. We all eat each other's egg. And you haven't agreed, and I know you haven't agreed on any specific data gaps, but can you give maybe more, because I know ideas about data gaps, because I know, we talked about, filling in the edges to figure out where the GNC would be more specifically, so that's obviously a data gap. But are there others that I can roughly point to and say, look, there's more information, they're collecting more, and this is kind of what that more information is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, so regarding the chickens, really the question is, we have PFAS definitely detected in eggs. And so the question is, how is it getting into the eggs at this point? So we have, we've collected samples now over two different seasons, and we expanded it in the second season
kind of with an assumption of what we were gonna find, and the results, you know, are still, let's say we're still evaluating what we found. It wasn't as simple and straightforward as what we were expecting, because we thought we kind of understood what the pathway was, like how PFAS was getting from, you know, whatever it was getting, was it in the soil, was it in the groundwater, like how is it getting, you know, into the chicken and then into the egg? And it seems things may be a little bit more complicated. And so for us, for chickens at this point, it's trying to figure out, you know, how is the PFAS getting into the egg? You know, what is driving it? Is it coming, you know, from chicken pen soil? Is it, and how is it getting in the chicken pen soil? Is that from the chickens being there? Is it from, I don't know, kitchen waste? I mean, there's all kinds of things that are involved with chickens, which makes them very kind of complicated. So it's trying to figure out if there's a site-related reason why there's PFAS in chicken eggs. And so we have some expanded sampling that we're proposing to do that's related to that. You know, it's collecting additional samples that are related to chickens and some other sampling that is, you know, is kind of tangential to that to try to help us to tease out the pathway.
Can you just remind the group how many locations you sampled eggs at?
Yeah, so the first time it was just 2. So we had 2 residents which were actually using so they're pulling up groundwater, which has PFAS in it, which the chickens were drinking. That was the ones that we focused on first, because, you know, we thought, well, that's an obvious pathway for PFAS removing from the base, you know, into eggs. And then so in the expanded round, we did, I think it's, we ended up with about 7, and we added others. So we thought, well, okay, we have an idea now, we have these, so let's confirm that, you know, see what we find in the next year. And then let's add these other homes, which don't have a direct pathway for PFAS. And, you know, we found PFAS in the eggs. You know, we haven't actually presented that data yet. So, you know, but essentially it wasn't straightforward. It wasn't, you know, the ones in the drinking water are definitely higher, and you know, it wasn't a straightforward connection. So,
and were those eggs all around town, North Newington, South Newington?
They were
a lot of people selling eggs.
They were north. They were all in the north. Yeah, I think they're all in the north.
And so what else?
Other data gaps. There's some other good data gaps we're looking at.
Well, we have like the source area soil, so the teal spots on the map. Those are areas where we know that there was AFR1 release. So site FTA2, site 8, we call it. We're finding the extent where that might be, so we can have a better understanding of that distribution. Is one. Mentioned some localized source areas that haven't been fully evaluated. Additional wells we have a predictive groundwater model that basically looks at different scenarios and different amounts of time where the edge can be going. So we're looking at where the data resolution is in that model, and if there are additional data points we can put in there, for instance. And around the edge of the known extent of groundwater would be another area where we're evaluating.
Thanks. Great. Okay.
I just had a question. Made me think of, you know, the data gaps, those small working meetings we had during COVID. I remember over Zoom when Roger was the project manager, where as RAB members, we could really give a lot of input. And I felt those were really productive. I know Mike was definitely there. Mark, I'm trying to remember in time who was there. Lulu. Yeah. So anyways, if as you decide additional data gaps, it might be helpful to host another session or like 2 like that with RAB members, so we can continue to give input, you know. I felt like those were really productive and helpful. So I just wanted to make that comment. 2 things I just wanted to mention, because I know there's 2 RAB members that aren't here. Peggy Lamson was not able to make it tonight, but she called me today and she was thankful for the materials and everything that was sent ahead of time. She watched the presentation, and you know, her biggest message was she just wants to continue to focus on site 8 and getting that up and running and being as productive as it can be. So I wanted to pass that message along. And then also Jamie Payne wasn't able to make it tonight, and he had a couple suggestions in an email that he sent. And one was, Chris, when you send out your monthly newsletters, if you know, is it possible for you to include a year-to-date progress report on each cleanup site? So I think being a little bit more specific on each site, how they're, you know, how productive and effective each plant is being, if we could be a little bit more specific with a year-to-date update. So I just wanted to share that feedback.
I really don't have that as scope as far as getting some assistance with drafting that. So that's probably not going to happen in the short term by any means. Yeah, I mean, if there's something that people want to see more of and click on one of the newsletters, please do. I generally try to keep the information in those monthly newsletters kind of, hey, this is what's been happening since the last time, here's what we're doing. And then obviously the last one was shorter, just about her presenting a lot of this data here.
Right. That was just a comment I wanted to share that he mentioned. And then he asked regarding Ames treatment, what percentage of Ames works per month and how productive is it? So I wanted to put that question out there. I know we didn't get a whole lot of Ames update tonight, which is okay, but that was a question that he had raised. So I don't know if we have any information on that, or if that's something we could get back to the RAB on.
Yeah, I'll just quickly in the newsletter, I know Mike, you had mentioned that the last one did have them kind of combined. It was just kind of a specific summary that I wanted to provide this one. So going forward, I'm going to go back to how I used to obviously each plant broken down. So you can see the numbers going through each one. Oh, there you go. Answer the question.
You've been doing
So I like that data roundup, because particularly with the information about the RI order. You know, we probably have 171 people or something like that working on this throughout the project. It's a lot of people, and it's nice to share that kind of information with you all. So you can see the level of effort that this team puts forward. But yeah, I'll go back to splitting those out again, no problem.
Yeah, and I think sharing about how productive they are, you know, from a percentage standpoint, or, you know, that'd be helpful to know.
Right. What was the percent, more specifically, the percentage of uptime or percentage of?
Just said, what percent of Ames works per month and how productive is it?
Okay.
So it was an email. So
yeah, it's difficult when you're presented with those metrics to put a kind of a tangible, you know, facet to it.
Yeah.
You know, how many gallons treated per month? What does that really look like? So,
well, maybe setting the expectation of if the plant was 100% productive, it would filter X amount of gallons, right, and this is how many we have filtered this month. I think that may be one way to present it. So we could see, is it working at its full potential? I know in the past we've heard with Site 8, it's been at like 30% capacity. So I don't know if that's where he's maybe asking, is Ames at 80%, is Ames at 100? You know, having us get a sense of how effective these plants are, I think is what he's trying to do.
There's two important metrics for the plants. One would be the uptime. So the plant's consistently running. Typically, Ames almost never ceases to operate. Both plants really, Site 8. And then what we look at is how many gallons can they treat per minute. So that's measured constantly. And those metrics can be presented on a monthly basis for how those operate. And certainly a lot of factors at each plant affect the optimization, you know, how optimal those plants can both operate.
I get effective in what we look at, Peter and I, and I think the whole technical team is looking at that, what we're capturing. So it's hydraulic capture. So you're trying to capture this sort of polygon of contaminated water that's in the vicinity and flows in the direction of the haven further south. So, and they do create, I think some of these figures may have that presented in the presentation. So those will change as, you know, during you have, you know, when there's higher infiltration, seasonal groundwater, and how the system operates during seasons and so forth. So that actually is what we look at. So we look at how that captures of that contaminated water, what it looks like, how extensive it is, or how, and it varies over time, but that's very informative as far as performance goes. I know it's a little bit obtuse, and maybe again, numbers are always helpful, but I think if I was going to provide something to maybe Jamie and to everybody, that would probably be showing those figures and what they look like. And it tells you exactly how the system's performing relative to capture how much water that contaminated water is capturing. And so,
right. Info. I mean, that Mike makes a really good point there, and it's probably, I mean, we have to think about it, but it you know, that's a good metric because it kind of normalizes things, because inflow, you know, Grant was saying, well, we look at how much it's pumping. Well, what happens there is the Ames, if the Hayden well is in high use, we're not pumping that much because there's a balance between the two. So does that mean that we're ineffective? No, it doesn't mean we're ineffective. So that capture zone that capture zone is shaped regardless of whether we're pumping or not. I mean, it's if the Hayden well is pumping, it's going to be the same capture zone. If we had the IMW well, which is the kind of the Hayden well clone, you know, that when the Hayden well is off, we pump the IMW, and when the Hayden well turns on, we throttle that one back. But the effect is that the capture zone is pretty much the same. So I think the capture zone might be a good metric.
Okay, let's go to Michael, and then I want to see if there are people who want to give public comment just for time. Sure.
So this, again, on the positive end, is a great example of how getting together in this format, we can work on communication of the activity here and the success. And you're asking, I mean, it hasn't been discussed here in any depth, but you're talking about it. Basically, we're going to 2030 now for the rod. Well, anybody, if you went in any normal situation and asked for an extension for 3 years, they'd want to know what are you doing in the interim to try to remediate this. So our ability to communicate what is being done, how it's being improved, what are the timelines on getting the funding in place or whatever it is that has to be overcome in order to do that. That should be like a condition of the extension. And it would be in, you know, any private entity that was under an order that tried to get such an extension, they would be told that. So that's what we're working under. We've got excellent regulators here at the table. Let's work on those type of communications to be able to get information. I mean, it's all positive. The only reason we focus on Site A with our questioning was because you told us so many positive things about Ames. And then we compared that with Site A and say, you know, there's something wrong here. So this is good.
Checking in with those of you who are not RAB members, either virtually, if you're participating and you'd like to make public comment, if you can just put it in the Q&A. If you are in the room and you want to make public comment, can you raise your hand so we can count if there's anyone here for public comment? I think not in the room, and I think you can still speak. Hang on.
Okay, no, I was just going to let you know who's in the audience.
Oh, you want me to go through who's?
Oh no, I'm going to say task contractor is on tonight, so if they want to introduce themselves.
Oh, nice.
So,
great. So no, it doesn't look like anyone wants to make public comment. Let's have the task contractor introduce themselves, and in a couple minutes we'll go to Al for the water update, and then we can sort of see what other threads are on people's minds.
Yeah, and if people want more time with the maps too, let us know, because we could always, you know, stop at 10 minutes early or whatever and spend the last 10-15 minutes doing that.
Okay, and now we do have 2 hands in the public attendees, and potentially maybe one of them who's the task contractor. We have Hagai. Yeah. Okay, Hagai and Arnie and Carmen all have raised.
Thomas with
Carmen and Hagai. Okay, great. So let's let Arnie do public comment, and then we'll go to the task piece. So Arnie, we're going to let you speak. Now you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Andrea, thank you very much for bringing up your interest at your site about the surface water foam in water bodies. And it's a question.
Sorry, Arnie, I'm interrupting, sorry for 1 sec. Can you just introduce yourself so we know
Sure.
where you're coming from?
Arnie LaRich. I lived in New England and graduated from UNH just across the bay from your site. And I retired in Michigan in 2010 after working at EPA. And I found that the site here, the local municipals were not that active. So, and the public was not engaged or being asked to. So I petitioned the Air Force and the town to request a RAB. And I used your site, which you had started a year before, as a model. And I've tried to do that and I was the co-chair for 3.5 years. We fell upon the surface water foam by accident. High schoolers were on the site and it was a science project. And they asked, well, can we also sample that white stuff that's on the beach across from the Air Force? And so they did. The DEP took a sample and the Air Force took a sample. And lo and behold, it came back as, I think it was 65,000 parts per trillion by the state and 100,000 parts per trillion by the Air Force. So that's where it started. The sampling was done, but the results have not been a concerted effort by the Air Force at this site. And I even brought it up about 2 weeks ago during a technical session that our RAB had with them. But there are multiple reports being issued by the people and groups that have sampled here over the last 5 years. But it's not being used by anyone that we can tell. And I don't think the analysis is really being geared toward finding out why certain sites and how much is the danger of the foam on the beaches or blowing up onto the properties off the water because it gets pretty high and the wind can blow it up onto the properties. So I've got about 4 or 5 studies that I've found, and even the DoD, the research arm, Strategic Environmental Defense Program, and so there's a number of those that have been funded by DoD to study this, but it's mostly university reports that it takes a long time. So I'd like to work with Andrea and hopefully we can get a more concerted effort by the Air Force, because they're both Air Force sites, old SAC bases, in the future, and maybe expand it into some of the other sites, even a commercial contaminated site, found foam. So I'll leave it at that, but I think it's really important to start at this time during the RI to really start working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnie. Great, we're gonna invite Hagai and Carmen, the new task team, into the conversation. We will allow both of you to unmute and speak. I don't know, Mike, do you want to introduce them at all before they jump in?
Oh, no, let them jump right in.
All right, Carmen and Hagai, please jump in. Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name's Hagai Nassau. I'm with a company called Skio. We are a contractor for the US EPA, and we implement the Technical Assistance Services for Communities program. Thanks, Andrea, for giving a great introduction to the task program. EPA reached out to us to let us know that the RAB community members might be able to benefit from some of the task services that we have to offer. So we're pretty new to the site, but we look forward to getting in touch with the RAB community members and hearing how we can best help, support the community members as you guys work on the cleanup process. And I'm here joined on the call today with my colleague, Carmen King, who is going to be working with me to support you all.
Great, welcome. Thank you so much. May I ask, Hagai, when can we expect to meet with you and kind of get the ball rolling?
Pretty soon, Andrea. I sent an email out to you, but I need to check if I have your email address right, because I take it you didn't get that email on Monday, but I'll check with Mike Daly to make sure I have the correct email address for you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we're really looking forward to working with you and exploring this option. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrea.
Carmen, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, sure. I'd just like to introduce myself. Hello, everybody. I'm Carmen King. I work for SCIO as well. I'm a technical advisor under the TASK program. And I must say, I really love my job because finally, after 33 years of experience working on hazardous waste sites, I'm an aquatic toxicologist. I've got a pretty good understanding of how the CERCLA process works, but I also have a very good understanding of community concerns because I've lived within the footprint of 2 Superfund sites myself. So I would be thrilled to help you folks with technical questions, technical reviews, and being a resource. So thank you for inviting us, and I hope to assist you in the future.
Great, thank you very much. So, Hagai and Andrea, you'll be in touch. That's going to be yeah. And Mike, you're going to coordinate. Great. Thank you. That's great. Really nice news for the RAB. Let's go to the water update.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be glad to tell you a quick update on what's going on at the Pease Water Treatment Facility. I feel like we just hit a pretty big milestone. It's been 2 years now that the plant has been online. And we just got to the point where last month we changed out one of the carbon vessels, one of the 3 carbon vessels was changed out. And tomorrow we're going to be changing out 6 of the 12 resin vessels. So we're getting to that cycle of really operating the plant, changing things out. Treatment has been great. We have had no regulated compounds coming out of that facility. Some of the shorter change we're seeing coming through the resin vessels. That's before we get to the carbon. So we've seen that as help trigger. We've seen people actually come through the lead vessel in the resins, so that helped triggering of the changing of the resins. So now we're getting to that cycle where we'll change out 6 of the 12 this year. Next year we're scheduled to change out 6 the other 6. So everything's been working very well.
Great. How often are you going to change now?
Now, so this is the first time we've changed the nozzles for 2 years. So we're going to get the cycle. 2 to 3 year change out of the resins every 3 years. The carbon is sort of what we're thinking now, but it's going to sort of play out because we're constantly monitoring every month. We take samples throughout the process to see where the PFAS is going through the process to see if we need to speed that up or if we can slow it down.
I'm curious, what is the cost of each vessel, the GAC and the time exchange vessel?
The GAC was 53,000, I believe.
Each one?
Yes, each one.
And it lasts for 2 years?
That'll be on a 3-year cycle. So we'll be each one will be on a 3-year cycle. There's 3 of them, so we'll be doing one every year. $53,000, and the price may go up with the new regulations. There's going to be more demand for carbon. So,
what about the ion exchange resin?
The resin, I'm going to have to defer to Tim on that.
About 78,000.
78,000 per vessel. 78,000 per vessel. So that times 6 is what we fixed.
Michael, is your card up anew?
Yeah, I just would be remiss before we broke up if we didn't acknowledge the work that Andrea did in moving us forward with this task, getting a task, and making the decision, and the help we got from Mike and other people at EPA. It's going to change the dynamic here, and I'm sure it'll be for the better. And it'll help us be more educated, and you'll be dealing with people that, you know, obviously are going to find to be knowledgeable. Plus, their name King apparently. So it's a good name. What can we ask you? So thank you, Andrea, for all the work you did. And she made sure there was a consensus within the RAB to do this, put a lot of time into, you know, getting people who are only available for one meeting or another to understand the whole thing and make the decision. And we could have gone in a more, what essentially would have been I think much more time consuming, but also more adversarial way. And for us, I'm confident that this is the best selection. We need to walk before we run here. We learned a lot tonight. It's been going on for years, but there's a lot more to learn here.
Anything else about the water? Any questions for Al?
Thank you, Al. I have a question about a couple questions. The resin change. I know that you folks were piloting some different types of resin. Are you using a different resin based on the pilot, or are you sticking with the same resin?
We changed resins. Before we had an ECT blend, and now we're going with Calgon blend, which is a different. It's not the gel based. It's a porous ceramic based media. We're hoping that will help us with some of the pressure. We were getting high differential pressure through some of the vessels, and it was a different type of media. And the pilot tests showed that it was performing as well, if not a little better than some of the others.
Okay. So do you have like a robust sampling plan in place to, once it's full scale, to see that it's effective?
Same thing. Once a month, we sample throughout after the lead vessel, after the ready vessel. Because of that stuff.
Okay, great. And then you mentioned the short chains that are breaking through the resin before the GAC, but are you seeing any short chain in the final product? Like,
yeah, we see PFBA, and that's around 32 parts per trillion. The latest sample was, and PFPEA, that's been around 6 parts per trillion.
Okay.
So the order that the PFAS comes through most media is the PFBA is the first one, PFPEA is the second. The next one we'll start seeing, if we see it, the PFHXA. It's another shorter chain compound that seems to go through media pretty quickly.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
So, any other? I'm going to give the RAB members a chance to share final thoughts, but before we do that, kind of round the circle, does anybody have any other questions or issues they want to discuss before we do? We have a hand. Oh, Val, jump on in. We're going to allow you to speak. And can you introduce yourself to those who don't know you? Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Yeah, this is Val Del Puente. I'm the branch chief and that's in charge of PEAS. It's one of my bases, and Chris works for me. And I've been acting Beck before, and hopefully I won't have to be acting Beck anytime soon. But I wanted to say that we have, Dr. Termath left almost a year ago, and we finally hired someone in January, Greg Gangnes. He was a branch chief in the Western region, so he's worked side by side with me for years. Not directly familiar with PEAS, but certainly has seen a number of my packages and a number of my issues raised within the division. But he is the new division chief. He will be down in July. We all will be down from mid-July for a Eastern Summit in Boston. It's a DoD regulator summit. I'm hoping to get him up to PEAS and to maybe meet some people, not necessarily in a RAB forum, but in some sort of a forum, just so he gets familiar with it. So he has that firsthand knowledge of it. But Greg Gangnes is the new Dr. Termath, and it's good. It's good for the program because, like I said, he's got a lot of experiences, like I do, with the BRAC bases and all the issues we've been facing in our various regions of the country. So that's all I like to say. And thanks for the participation of the RAB members on the RAB. I appreciate it. Over.
Thank you very much. All right, I think feels like the end of the conversation, just in terms of the vibe in the room. And so I'm gonna review some next steps that I heard, and then we're gonna go around and invite the people at the table to share any final thoughts. And it can just be a thank you, or it can be anything else on your mind as we wrap up. So some next steps that I caught, and the co-chairs and we will consult after and kind of review where we are, but we'll post meeting notes from the last meeting, the recording from this. We will get an updated contact list on the website with the new members. We will, let me see, Air Force is going to consider the request to give a kind of a heads up to homeowners whose levels would be above the MCLs and figure out what makes sense there. Hadi's trying to put a sort of be in people's bonnet about whether we could borrow the maps, take them to Newington somehow. And generally there's a request for some thoughts on communication with the community. The Air Force is going to share the human health risk assessment plan work plan. With the RAB. We'll just get an email out for how to access that. The RAB has invited the Air Force to schedule a technical session on data gaps if and when that might be useful. There were a couple of requests about things the newsletter could include for Chris to consider as he drafts that. And this July visit of some kind, potentially to be aware of. That's what I got. Am I missing any obvious next steps for this forum that anybody heard? Right. Let's do closing thoughts. We'll go around this circle and you can just say a thank you, good night, or share any other reflections.
Is there actually a location that you could find all the prior data that was given out?
You can find all the committees meeting notes on the website, all the data, and so we can help you find that. Yeah, it's a little bit of a learning curve.
But no, thank you. I'm looking forward to tonight. So
I'd just like to request that if sampling is going to be conducted at PEAS and it's not by the Air Force or the regulators, that PDA be contacted prior to it being conducted.
Just what a great first meeting. This was really informative. Those boards are so fantastic, and I had no idea how many people, engineers or hydrogeologists or whatever you all ended up, how many people were involved. This is just stunning. So thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure giving an update.
Thanks,
I feel for you new RAB members because so much has gone on for so many years here. I've been involved for 8 years and there just has been so much. And I don't know how to be able to get that information to you because there is so much. It's going to take a long time. A lot of reports to read. It's good to see summaries like this to help you get up to speed. I'm glad to be sitting at the table with the RAB now.
Have you
come back to me later or we go now?
Here, we'll let you and Andrew go at the end. Haley.
I just want to thank everybody for the discussions. Nice to have an opportunity to share for data.
Glad I'm here. I'm glad I could help.
Thank you for having me on the board, and this is a tremendous opportunity to make a difference.
I'd like to offer again for new folks, if you want to hook up with him and I do come up on bar. So if you want to try to, we can sort of give you like a crash course. If you had some time or some bandwidth, we could certainly do that. Or if you just go through some of the information, as Anna mentioned, there's a history of presentations. They're high level, but again, anything that you see that you have a question with, you can certainly use my phone, or again, I love coming out to the Seacoast. So if you ever want to come and just chat for a while, we can certainly help you.
Thank you.
And I'm right here in this office, so easy to get a hold of. And there's so much data to review. If you're interested, you can dive deep in the report. There will be an exam at the next round.
Yeah. You gotta learn all the acronyms.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Anna, for running a real quality and informative meeting, as well as all the people that supported it. So I
Yeah, just a thank you, right? I think the forum for this is excellent in that, you know, getting the meeting material ahead of time is helpful because I'm able to review it. And as I discussed with Amy beforehand, right, I had to watch it a couple times to really make sure I understood what I was after. And even still be able to take the, you know, the models chart here that Amy produced and be able to ask her some questions in the you know, short time that we had in between for her to be able to explain it to me like I was in 8th grade so that I could really get it, right? And that I knew what I was looking at. And, you know, for Hank to walk us through the maps and the models so that we really got a true representation and understanding of what it was that we were looking at. I think, you know, for a newer member like myself, who's only been on for a little while, right, it helps. And then suddenly it starts to click and you get what's going on when you look back to Ben's point about, you know, where we've been and what we've done in the past. And as Al said, there's been some heavy work here done in the room by plenty of other folks before me. So thank you all.
I'd like to say thanks. I think the new members, together with the task, together with really, I mean, you've broken through in terms of being able to present information that is digestible. And I think if we can get beyond the NDAA, we'll just get a little more specific here. This is going to be a very constructive period that you're going to look back on and say, that's when we really got traction on these issues. And you just got to stick with it, okay?
Let's go to Andrea and then Chris. Okay.
Yeah, I also want to echo all the thank yous that everyone gave. I thought this has been a very productive meeting. I really appreciate the pre-recorded presentations for, you know, the reasons that have been mentioned, and the posters have been extremely helpful. You know, printing these to bigger sizes for us at the last minute. Like, thank you so much. You've been very accommodating and we appreciate it. And, you know, as we move forward, as you determine those data gaps, please include us. You know, I would love to have more pointed conversations with all of you on that to make sure that, you know, we have some say in the things that you're going to look forward to testing again or testing for the first time. And thank you for working to make the newsletter more robust. I think that's super helpful, especially giving those updates in between meetings. And I have to say, I don't know of any other RAB that does that. So thank you, Chris. That's you going above and beyond to meet a need of ours. And we really appreciate it. And we really appreciate being open to sharing the information in a way that helps us. So I'll just end by saying two things. You know, those interviews that I talked about, that DoD initiative, I will continue to advocate that we're interviewed in person. I think we do a lot of good things here. And I think there's some things that we can continue to improve on, but I do think we have valuable experiences to share. So I will continue to push for that. And I will just close by saying I'm really looking forward to the task and the work that that we can put into that, but also in the way that they can help us, help the community, help this process. So I think there's a lot of really great things to look forward to. This was a great meeting. And I just want to thank everybody for being here and for all your efforts. It is appreciated and it is noticed.
All right. Great. Well, again, I also have thanks for the new RAD members, but I really want to thank those of you who stuck around for so long. You know, thank you for that as well. Your knowledge of the historical stuff is definitely a benefit. And to all the people that do all the work in the back, these are the rock stars here. So thank you all for continuing to do what you do there. This has been a great meeting, and I think has been so for a couple of reasons. But we also got some feedback from you all about what you wanted to hear at this meeting beforehand. We were able to prepare. And so I think that probably helped us along. And so I know, Andrea, you talked with your community members a lot about that. Is, you know, we kind of started setting the dates for the agendas. But yes, if you have that opportunity as RAD members, if there's something you really want to hear, let us know. We need some time. We have to prepare. These recordings are a challenge. I know they're helpful, and we agree they're helpful. It's but they take some time to put together. And so when we are able to hear some of the things you want, we can just tailor it and make it better for everybody. So please continue to do that. And with that, see you next time.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. We've had such a high ratio in person. It was really fun. And I feel like I kind of feel this web of connections of all the knowledge of all these different types of expertise. And it feels tonight like they're sort of braiding together in a really positive, forward way for the benefit of the community in this place that matters so much. So be well. We will see you in a few months. And stay in touch. There is not a date yet. It's usually kind of 3 months. Early-ish.
So,
Adjust as needed.
so probably July would be too soon, do you think? Like if there's a gentleman coming up, your new boss or Val's new boss coming up.
Yeah, we might be able
that-
to accommodate that, maybe on a Brad, maybe if it's like a workshop.
Or casual something.
That, and then.
Okay,
That'd be good.
especially if it's summer.
Yeah.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.